In mid-July, the band was playing in Europe and decided to return to South America to finish the last leg of the Skin and Bones tour. This time they played only in Argentina. They did 2 shows in the same place that they played 7 months ago. The River Plate Stadium in Buenos Aires. These last 2 concerts were broadcast on radio and TV. The day of their final show was on July 17th, and it was not without controversy. Around 5 p.m., a group of 50 police officers from the Narcotics Division arrived at the hotel searching for drugs just when the band was getting ready for their last show. However, the police didn't find anything, so Axl decided to do a press conference to clarify all this misunderstanding. This was the last show with the old lineup where you can notice an extra energy by the band. Apparently, they knew this would be their last concert in many years. At the end of their set, you can see Axl hugging Slash, like being grateful for playing together. Definitely a great way to end one of the most controversial and largest rock tours in music history. Individually, each band member started to work on other musical projects and collaborations with other artists. Duff Mckagan would be the first GNR member of this lineup to release a solo project just a couple months after the Guns tour was over. Duff already had written more than 60 songs. The album Believe in Me has 13 tracks, and it was released on September 28, 1993, under the contract of Geffen Records. The album reached number 137 on the Billboard 200, and it was produced by Jim Mitchell. Duff played and recorded all the instruments including the drums, but enlisted the help of a few friends and former bandmates to make it more unique.
Slash played on the song, Matt Storm, our drummer, played drums on the song, Teddy played keyboards, left Izzy, Sebastian and Rob from Skid Row played the song. It's great. I mean, it got, little help from my friends. It's great.
The single to promote it was Believe in Me. The album was recorded in 8 different studios. In an interview with Hard Rock France, Mckagan explains how Jeff Beck ended up collaborating with him. We met in Paris when he was going to join GNR on stage. His hotel room was across mine, and we hit it off, so I played him tapes of my solo songs, and one of them in particular caught his attention. It was a pretty funky fusion tune, and he actually asked me if he could write a solo on it. You can't imagine how much I blushed. I was overwhelmed. Fucking Jeff Beck. What a treat. The track is called Swamp Song. In the end, it's still basically a record made 100% by me, especially as far as writing goes.
Jeff Beck, he heard me play it in my hotel room, and I had all the basics, and he just knocked on the door and he comes in. He goes, "What's this?" And I told him what I was doing. He goes, "Man, can I play on it?" I'm like, when? You don't say no to Jeff Beck, And Lenny's just a good friend of mine, and he used to come to my house, and he really liked this song the majority, and I got done recording it in the studio. I was at A&M, still in LA. And I called him, I said, "Dude, I recorded it at a real studio. You want to sing it?" He was there in 5 minutes, sang it, and that was that.
During the Use Your Illusion tour, most of the fans already knew about a new album coming up anytime soon. As a matter of fact, Axl always gave a speech to the crowd, usually before they played the Misfit song, Attitude. The lead singer always talked about a punk cover album they were going to release in the near future. In November of 1993, Guns N' Roses released their 5th studio album, The Spaghetti Incident, a compilation of cover songs from bands that inspired and influenced them. The album debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 and was certified double platinum. The Spaghetti Incident sold 190,000 copies in its first week. Several songs were recorded during the Use Your Illusion sessions with Izzy Stradlin, but later would be re-recorded by Gilby Clark. Originally, Guns N' Roses wanted to release an EP, but at the last minute they decided to do a full-length album, including a song written by infamous serial killer Charles Manson. Michael Monroe was the one who suggested Axl to put the song Ain't It Fun on the album, and the band agreed to record it. Actually, it is the first single that the band released, just few days before the album came out. The Spaghetti Incident is compassed by 12 songs and a hitting track. Also, one song features lead vocals by Slash, and it was produced by Mike Klink and Jim Mitchell. Something inexplicable that happened during that time is that the band released a video for Stranged, a song that appears in their previous album, Use Your Illusion 2. Another weird situation was that the band didn't make a tour to promote the Spaghetti Incident either.
What about the Spaghetti Incident? What was that experience like? All covers?
Well, that record sort of came together on a whim, We were on the road, and Axl would call up and say, "Hey, let's record tonight, I want to do Since I Don't Have You, and we'd go, "Oh, wow," And we'd all show up in the studio and record it, and then we did probably 2 other sessions for the whole record, recorded 5 or 6 songs a day. And before we knew it, we had all these songs.
You had an album.
Yeah, and we said, well, what are we going to do with this? So we said we'd put it out.
There was no marketing strategy for it or some sort of like ploy to get us to a certain place. We just wanted to record some songs and release them. When we first got into this thing, I first started recording it, it was more or less punk songs. After, 13 songs were recorded, all of a sudden it wasn't a punk record so much anymore. It was a Guns N' Roses compilation of songs that we were into and bands that we were into when we were coming up and sort of younger and being influenced by all this stuff that was going on.
There were a lot of rumors about the name of the album. In an interview, Matt said it was about a fight that Steven Adler and Axl got in an Italian restaurant throwing spaghetti and meatballs at each other. Another story said that Steven Adler used to keep his drugs in the refrigerator and Duff told him to use a code word to refer to them so no one would notice. The word chosen was spaghetti. Here is another explanation given by Duff about how he came up with the name. A little bit different from the one we just mentioned.
Steven / myself lived in Chicago for 3 months. We all lived together in this condominium, an apartment, above an Italian restaurant. And so in the deposition, Steven's lawyer asked me, he goes, "Do you guys ever get in any fights while you were there?" And I said, "Well, no, not really. Maybe if I got spaghetti from the Italian place below us one night and ate half of it and saved the rest for the next morning, maybe if somebody else ate it and I was really looking forward to eating it, maybe there'd be a little fight." And that was it, period. And the lawyer's like, "Okay." So we get to court, and I'm up on the stand, and there's a jury and everything. Now, about your spaghetti incident, and and the guys in the band were all, and everybody started busting up, because the lawyer took it seriously. So, and we got done with court that day. We're going to call this album Spaghetti Incident, so that's what that's from.
In quotes, the spaghetti incident with a question mark.
It's an inside joke with the band, and I can't wait for the rumors as to what the spaghetti incident's all about.
Guns N' Roses, the spaghetti incident, out now.
Something we don't get to do near enough on the Headbangers Ball is have an artist perform live, especially perform live before we've even seen the video or anything like this, but this is a rare instance, so right now...
In the meantime, Duff started to promote his debut album. He played a couple of shows in the United States. Later on, he went out on the road as the opening act for the band Scorpions and played several shows all over Europe. In 1994, Duff continued touring in Australia and Japan, but his drinking problem made it more difficult to stay on his feet. Duff's alcoholism finally caught up with him dramatically, and a couple of months later his pancreas blew up.
I was in so much pain, they shot me up with 2 shots of Demerol and morphine, and then morphine, and I was still just completely doubled over.
Whoa.
And then seeing the doctors' faces turn white once they did the ultrasound.
Yeah.
Like, how is this guy still
alive?
Yeah.
Whoa. How long do you think this will last? Forever?
Yeah.
When Duff got off from the hospital, his doctor suggested that would be great if he could go to a rehabilitation center in Olympia. Duff never agreed with this idea, so he chose to get clean up by himself. According to Duff, the 2 weeks that he spent in the hospital were quite enough rehabilitation for him. Duff went to his house in Seattle with a prescription and pills provided by the hospital to continue his treatment. The pills made him shake so much that even himself was afraid to drive his own car. He started to ride an old bike that was stored in his garage. Mckagan ended up riding mountain bike 8 hours a day. In fact, he signed up for an amateur's race. He also started to practice martial arts as well. Axl was the only member of the band who visited him during this period, and also some of the crew members. Duff and Axl started to talk about how they could put out a new GNR album and what new direction they could give it. By this time Gilby Clark was out of the band, and he released his solo album, Pawnshop Guitars.
It is true that Gilby is no longer in the band.
Gilby's no longer with us. He's not with Guns.
Okay, and there's a new guitarist that's been hired.
I could leave tomorrow. I honestly, we don't know what's happening with GNR.
I have no idea what's going on right now. I really don't.
There's no talk on...
No, I haven't spoke to some of the guys in a long time.
When was the last time that Guns played?
It was a year ago.
Gilby Clark released his solo album in 1994 with the support of Virgin Records. At first some of these songs were presented to be part of the GNR catalog, but apparently there was not much interest in them, and they did not fit well in the style that Axl wanted to give the band during that time, so Gilby decided to release them as a solo project. Most of the songs were written before Gilby joined the band, and only 4 were written during the period he was touring with GNR. One of those songs was Cure Me or Kill Me. Gilby explained that during the old days when they were broke, they used to pawn their guitars to survive. One of his songs is called Pawn Shop Guitars. He thought, what an interesting title to put this whole concept together. The album has 11 tracks, but the version released in Japan has 12. Gilby brought several friends to record it, like Black Francis from the band Pixies, and also Skid Row drummer Rob Affuso. Gilby also counted with the collaboration of all the members of GNR, including Axl on piano and vocals. They recorded Dead Flowers by the Rolling Stones. At first Axl had only recorded the piano, then he asked Gilby if he wanted him to sing it too. Clark obviously agreed immediately. At the end of August, Gilby went on tour to promote his album.
Right now you're out touring.
Yeah, we started in the States like about a couple months ago with Motley Crue. And then I went to Europe, and then I'm starting back in the States for the rest of the year. Then going to South America with Aerosmith.
Ooh,
yeah, that's gonna be cool.
And when people are going to your shows, are they expecting, what are they expecting?
Half of the people heard like the song on the radio, and half the people are just GNR guys and stuff, And it's like, at first, we start out, I play like a song off the Spaghetti, and say, play songs off my record, couple Kill for Thrills, and then we just jam and play covers. Sometimes we'll play, like last night I think we played like 5 Stone songs. Mm-hmm. It's like, we just get going. I wrote everything pretty much for this record. That was the reason why I made it, because I wrote a bunch of songs and they really didn't fit with GNR, so I just did it on my own.
What was really nice about playing with the guys is there's a lot of aggression in their music. And once again, it is simple. It is like, rock, but maybe it's hard rock, but I like the way that they approached it. It was just very aggressive, and it was the way that I've always wanted to make records and play live.
Meanwhile, Slash was working on new material for GNR. Apparently these songs didn't fit with the new style that Axl wanted to give to the band either. These songs would end up being the first Snakepit album. The guitarist also decided to build a pinball machine. This was also a great opportunity to release Ain't Going Down, an unfinished song that GNR recorded in the Use Your Illusion sessions. Slash said, I thought Guns could make a pinball machine because there hasn't been a real rock and roll machine in a long time. The basic idea is to get all 6 guys on stage because we have a penchant for being late.
Well, for one, there hasn't been a cool pinball machine in the last 11 years as far as rock and roll is concerned. Like, I think the last one, not to plug Ted Nugent, but it was Weekend Warriors. Anyway, so when we decided to do one, it had to be something really cool and different and exciting. And so the Guns N' Roses machine is the loudest one ever made, so.
Slash approached Data East Pinball, and the Guns N' Roses game was born.
It's definitely a hit game. Plus, it's the first game that's ever had real guitars. It's also the loudest one made to date, So I'm real proud of it.
Blaring 8 GNR classics, the machine also plays some unreleased material.
There's a song called Ain't Going Down, which we just never finished. And we have a chorus for it. So I figured we'd use that, finally get it out there. So now that we've done it, we have to actually record it.
At the end of '94, GNR received an offer to be part of the soundtrack of the movie Interview with a Vampire, reversing the Rolling Stones song, Sympathy for the Devil. When Slash saw the movie, he didn't like it at all, but Axl loved it. Slash saw this as a new opportunity to try and get the band back together in the studio so they could record new material. Axl insisted on putting a childhood friend named Paul Hughes to replace Gilby's position so he can be part of the band. Slash and Paul didn't blend at all, either the rest of the band. Paul recorded guitar solos after the song was done, but the band didn't know about this. Just Axl.
There's a guy that's from Indiana who I can't stand, and he sort of added a little rhythm guitar there, but he also put little answers on my guitar solo. If you listen to it, you'll hear my guitar and then you'll hear this little tinny little thing in the background. And so that, the movie bored me to tears. And Axl, of course, always being my nemesis, right, went and saw it and loved it. I thought it was a great plot to get Guns more or less together and just start working as a unit. But I think we pulled it off really well compared to like a lot of other bands that would have been offered to do it that I don't think could have really gotten to the vibe as well. With the absence of Gilby, there was a hole in the band there. Then there was a new guy that came in, but we haven't really all come to a cohesive decision as to what exactly we're going to do.
Former Ozzy Osbourne guitarist Zakk Wylde was considered to be part of this new lineup. It was the complete opposite of Paul Hughes. He and the rest of the guys were friends before and they got along very well. Slash said that the chemistry didn't quite fit because having two lead guitar players at the same time didn't match with the style of GNR, and when they were jamming, it sounded a little bit confusing having two guys playing the same thing instead of one guy doing the rhythm parts.
The very latest news from the Guns N' Roses camp is that the band have been rehearsing recently with former Ozzy Osbourne guitarist Zakk Wylde.
We jam with Zakk, but Zack's like he's a good friend, so we've just been jamming. We haven't made some sort of finalized decision as to who's going to be the new guitar player.
Usually Guns N' Roses has an off rhythm and a main lead sort of riff. So now me and Zakk just play the same thing. Right. But that's just because we're both lead guitar players. So as much as I love Zakk, we haven't made any decision. We don't sound right. It doesn't sound right with like two heavy lead guitar players.
In January 1995, Slash decides to release It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere, the first album of his new band Slash's Snakepit. The album peaked at number 70 on the Billboard 200 and was certified platinum and distributed by Geffen Records. Slash said, "Originally, it was just to fill the gap between Guns' last tour and the next record. Izzy was gone, me and Duff were hanging out a lot, and Steven was gone. So the band was not necessarily the same band anyway. I was hanging out with the guys that I hired to fill the positions in Guns, which was Gilby Clark and Matt Sorum, and Mike Inez was just a good friend of mine. Basically we were just writing and recording and digging having a studio in the house. It was a demo, but not even a demo. The whole thing took 2 weeks."
Me, Slash, and Matt are working on some songs. It's not for Guns N' Roses, not for anything in general.
It's an album with Slash and you?
It could be Slash's album is what it could be, because Slash has been talking about making his own album, you know, because Duff did it, I did it, he can do it.
He has to do it.
He has some really, really good songs.
A lot of people expected it to be a solo project, and I mean, even Axl, who we had a couple altercations between he and I where he wanted the material back, and I said, no, the album's finished. And he was like, you couldn't have done an album in 2 weeks. I said, oh yeah, it's done, it's been done. I mean, it could have been Guns N' Roses material at the time if he'd been really into it, but that wasn't the musical direction that he wanted to go in.
I don't think Axl was real happy about my doing this right when I did it, but at the same time, you know, it was, well, why don't you make a solo record? He just didn't think I was going to take it, and the next thing you know, it was done. And he's like, whoa, wait, slow down. And I was like, no, I got to be on tour and such and such a date. I'll be back. I'll see you in July.
When the Guns tour was over, me and Matt started writing tunes. And then all of a sudden we started, you know, Gilby got involved and Mike Inez got involved and we had a band. Mike showed up and Matt, you know, told me, you know, he's the guy from Alice in Chains. So I got whatever, he's a good bass player. So he came up and he brought this whole new sort of vibe to it. And then all of a sudden it seemed like a band. So we went in the studio and recorded an album, and at the same time we started auditioning singers. He was recommended by Mark Danzeisen, who is Gilby Clark's ex-drummer. And so I liked his voice, and he liked his voice, and so we said, well, sing to this particular song, which turned out to be Beggars and Hangers On.
So I sent in a tape, and that's it. They give me a plaque and everything. 41st vocalist, you know.
It's really a band, so we collaborated a lot because for one, we were forced to, and for two, because none of us had really all worked together as a band, so we all had a lot of input to get the basic idea across as to what we all sound like together. I mentioned to Axl, let's go play some clubs for the Spaghetti Incident when that came out, and Axl wasn't into the idea, and I was like, well, what are we going to do? And, you know, like, I don't want to get a huge orchestra and all that kind of crap on stage. I just want to get back down to a normal rock and roll level, which meant going back to clubs. You can't get any bigger than the stadium, you know, it's impossible. There was no future for Guns N' Roses, for, you know, on my behalf, to go and play in theaters or in small gigs.
Not at all.
Yeah, Axl was adamantly opposed to it. So this is, when this band came together, it just happened out of nowhere. In this instance, we can play a stadium here and there, and for the most part, we concentrate on just doing clubs. And then you really have a good fucking feeling of who you're playing to. And the reciprocation between the band and the audience is so tight that everybody becomes one. And I think that's what rock and roll is, you know. The name Snakepit came from the fact that we recorded the demos for this actual album in a room that's right next to the snake pit in the house, which is where all the snakes are. And we just called it Snakepit because it was the easiest thing to come up with. I went to England one time with guns, and went to the bar. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, I know it's only 10 o'clock, but give me a Jack and Coke. And the bartender looked me dead in the eye, and he goes, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. And so it's stuck in my head ever since then. And so when we were doing this thing, basically that's what the whole album's about. You know, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Give me a break.
Don't forget to share, subscribe, and comment below. That will help me a lot. This video was made by Chillabootleg.
You guys weren't even expecting what you're doing on the radio. Izzy, come out here. Izzy's looking trouble for Indiana to come hang out and shit.
When Slash was touring, some rumors would take place that Izzy Stradlin was rejoining GNR. The rumors started after Izzy played one song with Snakepit in Chicago. In fact, Izzy wanted to write new songs, but he wasn't interested in going on tour with the band. Stradlin wanted to keep it simple. He wanted the complete opposite of what the band had done a couple of years ago with big productions and guest musicians. According to Rock Hard magazine, Duff called Izzy and said, "I'm trying to write new songs for the next GNR record. Come lend me a hand." It's been 5 years since I'd left Guns, but I told myself, well, why not? Duff and I wrote 10 songs in 1 week and also made demos of them. And I thought, it's so easy when you work with someone like Duff who loves music in the same way you do, everything becomes simple. Some of the songs might have ended up on any of Izzy's later albums or even any Duff Mckagan projects. According to Stradlin, those tapes went nowhere. Until now, the future of Guns was uncertain. Finding a new rhythm guitar player to replace Gilby's position became a real nightmare. Axl insisted that Paul Hughes should be the new guitarist, and the band finally agreed to work with him. The rumors about the band splitting started to become more real. The press of course wanted to know what was going on inside GNR. Every single interview they asked about the relationship with Axl and the rest of the guys, or the most common question was if the band would be releasing a new album anytime soon. Gilby Clark, Duff Mckagan, Matt Sorum and Slash were more musically active than Axl Rose, and they had touring a lot after the Use Your Illusion tour was over. Duff and Matt started to work in another project called Neurotic Outsiders with guitarist Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols. Slash collaborate with tons of artists over these years including Paul Rogers, Carole King and Michael Jackson between others.
When can we expect the new Guns N' Roses album?
When did you last talk to Axl Rose?
Have you actually got any new songs written or any ideas got together?
When the Snakepit tour was over, Matt Sorum, Duff Mckagan and Slash were back to rehearsals. The tension between Axl and the rest of the guys make more difficult to pull out new material. They didn't agree with the overnight rehearsals proposed by Axl and what musical direction the lead singer wanted to give to the band. Finally, in October of '96, Slash take a step aside and leave the band, followed by Matt Sorum in April of '97. To replace Matt's position, former Pearl Jam drummer Dave Abruzzese started to work with Axl. Another member who joined this new lineup would be the guitarist from 9 Inch Nails Robin Fink. Duff was not very happy with this band. He always remembered that he started to play music because he loved it and it wasn't for money, but at this point it seemed like a business that he didn't want to be a part of. He wasn't felt part of this new GNR, it was not even close of what they had created in the 80s. When he realized that Izzy Stradlin, Steven Adler and Slash were no longer there, he wondered, what is the point? Sadly, in August of '97, original bassist Duff Mckagan would quit the band leaving Axl as the only original member with this new lineup. In 1998, Tommy Stinson and Chris Pittman joins the band. Dave Abruzzese stops working with GNR, and Josh Freese start to record it and writing new songs for what would be the new GNR album, Chinese Democracy.
There's a few things that I really had a big hand in on the writing. For instance, the title track, Chinese Democracy, I wrote the music to it. There was a few other songs that had working titles that never ended up on the Chinese Democracy record, but were laying around. I know at least when we recorded them 20 years ago, Axl liked them a lot. And once again, when I was there, they didn't have any lyrics yet, so they just had these working titles. The song Chinese Democracy wasn't called Chinese Democracy yet. I think the working title was Smells Like Josh Spirit, because I wrote it and the chords are really simple. It's just like these 3 chords over and over and over. And someone at one point goes, this sounds like kind of a cool like Nirvana riff or something. So it was titled Smells Like Josh Spirit, like up on the board where we had all the songs we were working on. Axl hadn't written any lyrics to it yet. And that didn't happen until after I left. There's a lot of pressure on Axl, and he was kind of doing it without his regular band for the first time ever. So I think that was unnerving probably for him, and a little bit scary, you know. But anyways, it was something that I enjoyed the time I spent down there, but I didn't want to sit around anymore. And that's kind of what it was looking like was going to happen. And they did kind of not sit around, but they spent a lot more time on the record still after I left. And I was glad that I made that record with A Perfect Circle and went out on tour and we started that, you know. That was a little bit more of a real band to me and something that I was really a part of from the ground up rather than being the 3rd or 4th drummer in line in a project.
Robin Fink, the guitarist for Nine Inch Nails, was playing with Guns N' Roses at the time, and we were in this new configuration of Guns N' Roses. And towards the end of the 2 years that I was there, Robin ended up leaving and rejoining Nine Inch Nails, and we needed a guitar player. We'd auditioned a bunch of guys, and Axl was like, do you know this guy Buckethead? And I was like, yeah, I do know Buckethead. So I told Buckethead, I said, listen, man, they were about to basically give him the job. And I said, I want to let you know that I don't think I'm going to be here too much longer. You know, I've got my 2-year contract is up soon. There was so many other moving parts in the Guns N' Roses thing and so much second guessing that it seemed like this isn't going to leave this room anytime soon. Of course, after I left, Buckethead and Brain being super tight, I was like, of course Brain's going to be the guy.
But what about his former colleagues in Guns N' Roses, guitarist Slash, bassist Duff Mckagan, drummer Matt Sorum? Well, this week all 3 of them reunited in snowy Utah to play an hour-long set at the Slam Dance Film Festival, a somewhat edgier offshoot of the by now mainstream Sundance Festival nearby. Slash and company had some hired help on hand to round out the sound, but with Axl still among the missing, they didn't attempt any vintage Guns originals, although there was a reprise of the GNR cover of Bob Dylan's Knockin' on Heaven's Door. And here's what they had to say for themselves.
Before we left, you know, like people were calling saying, oh, it's on the internet, it's in Variety that Guns is back together to play or some
blown up.
And that's just like so far away from anything that's true. You know, we're just here to play, and it's really not that big of a deal. But we play good together.
It's been 8 years since the great guitar band Guns N' Roses released its last pair of studio albums, both called Use Your Illusion, and 6 years since the group last performed in public. Since that time, leader Axl Rose has parted ways, rather bitterly it seems, with his former Guns colleagues, most notably guitarist Slash, and has withdrawn into the studio to work on new material with a new group of players.
What have you been doing for the last 6.5 years since like the last tour ended?
Trying to figure out how to make a record. I originally wanted to make a traditional record or try to get back to an Appetite thing or something, because that would have been a lot easier for me to do, as I was involved in a lot of lawsuits for Guns N' Roses and in my own personal life, so I didn't have a lot of time to try to develop a new style or reinvent myself. So I was hoping to write a traditional thing, but I was not really allowed to do that.
What prevented you from doing like a traditional rock record?
Slash.
Axl Rose disappears for several years trying to reform GNR and trying to make a new album with new members. But on January 1, 2001, the House of Blues in Las Vegas seems like a good opportunity for Axl to show fans what he's been working on all these years. The new lineup is ready for their live show debut. But Axl is the only original member of the band. Another member from the 90s who joined them as well was Dizzy Reed, who has playing keyboards, percussion and piano since 1991. The group also plays new material, but the promised new album Chinese Democracy is not ready to be released and hasn't been finished yet. The work in progress was catalogued by the media as one of the most expensive albums ever made in music history. The fun fact was that Slash wanted to attend the show in Las Vegas. But the security guards has strict orders from the manager to not let him in. After their debut in Las Vegas, the band went to Brazil to play in the famous festival Rock in Rio, along with other artists like Sting, Iron Maiden, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Foo Fighters and many more. The show was broadcast by TV and radio. By that time, nobody knew when Chinese Democracy will be released. Not even Axl.
I hope he gets the record out, and there's some pretty heavy people at the helm right now working on the Guns record, so I don't think anybody's fucking around because I think too much money and time has been spent, you know, say they have to do it.
I don't know if I'll be comfortable watching other guys play, you know, Sweet Child of Mine.
I really have no regrets, you know. I don't think I ever will.